Welcome, everyone. I'm Matt Bach, Director of the Triathlon Business at UCAN, and I'm here with Tim O'Donnell. Welcome, Tim.
Oh, thanks, Matt. Glad to be here.
So, Tio, you are here on the UCAN Show, hot off a second place finish at the IRONMAN World Championship in Kona, in Hawaii, an American record sub-8 time of 7:59:40. Congratulations, Tim.
Oh, thanks, Matt. Still on cloud nine over here. We just got back from Hawaii actually yesterday. We had a few days of R&R there with the family, and it was awesome.
Fantastic. You just told me it's 6 weeks on the road, and you were from Kansas to Kona to here. It's been quite a trip, especially as a triathlete. You got all sorts of stuff, and you got a baby to move along too, so not an easy task.
A lot of logistics, but totally worth it.
So at UCAN headquarters here, we have a group of people viewing this live, the webinar. It's a bunch of staff, a bunch of friends of UCAN, investors. We've got the Feldman family here, and the original Team UCAN athlete, 4-time Olympian, Boston Marathon champ Meb Keflezighi had just surprised Tim by tuning in to congratulate him. So Tim, that was pretty cool, right?
That was awesome. Yeah, really nice surprise.
Meb is fantastic, and he's been with us since before the company was a company. So really some exciting stuff to kind of bring you two guys together on over the wires like this. So you've achieved a ton in the sport. I mean, you've been in the sport for over 20 years. So how does this performance in Kona stack up versus everything else you've done to date?
I really feel like it was one of my best performances ever, in any race. Obviously being at a world champs, it's always, bigger stage, but it was one of those days where, I had a plan in mind that I wanted to do and that I thought I could do, and I was able to execute it. And you just have to be proud of those moments when you're able to kind of do what you set out to do.
So the two main topics we want to cover tonight. So one, we want to hear, straight from the horse's mouth, how the race went down. I mean, you were one of the main players in the race, like how it went down, some of the main things that you took away from it. And then two, of course, we want to hear about your nutrition plan during Kona itself, but also during training leading up to Kona, since that played a pivotal role in you being ready to do what you did out there. So, but before all that, I want to take a few minutes for us all to learn a bit about your athletic background, kind of like where you started in the sport. So, Tim, tell us about your early experiences in triathlon and how you figured out that this is something you wanted to do professionally.
Well, yeah, my sporting career started as a swimmer. I'm the youngest of 4, and we all started swimming. So I joined my first swim team when I was 5, my first summer league swim team. And I swam all the way through high school and into college. I spent my first 2 years on the varsity team at the United States Naval Academy. And it was at the academy where I really got into triathlon. My older brother Thomas was a senior there. He had me try out for the club team. And I tried out, made the team, didn't really love it. And then kind of kept swimming. And then my junior year, at the end of my sophomore year, I did pretty well at collegiate nationals. And I decided, hey, maybe this is something I can really be good at. So I decided to shift focus, stop swimming, and just focus on triathlon, purely my last 2 years of college.
Mm-hmm. So is it like all of a sudden, boom, like it's all tri, my world is absorbed with tri?
It was pretty much. I mean, anybody that gets the bug, tri bug, they know. You fall into it pretty quickly. At the time, I didn't know much about Ironman racing. I was focused on obviously short course racing with the collegiate stuff, and then I got kind of recruited into USA Triathlon's pipeline for ITU racing. Was on the under 23 team, and then eventually the national team. So my focus was, short course racing, trying to make the Olympics. And it really wasn't until 2009 where I kind of made that shift. I started racing 70.3s with the intention of eventually going to Ironman. As I started to learn more about myself as an athlete and the sport, I realized that I was just a diesel engine. I was a workhorse, and I was really much more suited to be doing longer racing than the short course stuff, which is more of just a foot race. So, I started doing 70.3s, and then I met this young lady named Marinda Carfrey, who is now my wife, and I went out with her to watch her race Kona in 2009, and it was an unbelievably magical experience. I left the island that year knowing I wanted to do Ironman, knowing if I could do one thing in the sport, it was, try to win an Ironman World Championship. And it just completely shifted my career path from ITU racing to Ironman. And at that time, I was still looking at trying to go for the 2012 team. My running had improved a lot. I was on the podium at Pan American Champs and U.S. Nationals for ITU racing in 09 and 10. So I was in a great spot to be a contender for that 2012 Olympic team. But once I saw Kona, I knew that's where I had to go.
So just threw in the towel. You're like, I'm done with that. I'm on to Kona. I was moving on.
Yep. I actually did I did ITU World Cup in 2010 in Tongyang, Korea, and that was after I watched Rinny win Kona. And I flew from Kona to Tongyang, Korea, and it's a small little fishing village, and it just, obviously smelled like fish, and it was like 5 people out there watching the race. And I just thought to myself, like, what am I doing out here? This is not where I should be. So I did that, finished that race, and that was it. I was done ITU. Haven't done an ITU race since.
Yeah, wow. So heading into Kona this year, what were your expectations for yourself, and was it different than any of the years past? I mean, actually, like first, just to lay it down here, you've done Kona 6 of the last 8 years. You've been at the top 10 in Kona, so a very consistent performer. So going into this year, like, were your expectations different than in those past years?
Yeah, this year's it's been a crazy year for me. Like you said, I haven't been, fortunate to have a consistent record in Kona. So I always feel like that's a race where if I can get to the start line, I have a chance, just with my experience and, just love of that race. But, I started off the year with a bike crash and broken ribs and missed a bunch of races. Got through all that, got back on track. Great race at 70.3 Santa Rosa this summer. Started a beautiful build up to Kona, and then ended up breaking my foot about 7 weeks ago. And I was in a boot, and now I find myself in a boot going into Kona, the Kona prep, and just wondering if I'm even going to get to the start line. So that definitely made it difficult, and it kind of put a big question mark on how, if I get to the race, and if I did, how would I fare, especially on the run. But, through a lot of rehab, aqua jogging, running on the zero gravity treadmill, the Alter G, and about 4 or 5 runs outside before the race, I felt I had this weird confidence in my ability to run, almost like I knew that I didn't need to be doing as much as I have in the years past because I have so much in the bank. And I figured maybe, being fresh with only having done 2 other races, that it could be something really good. And, I've underperformed, I think, on the run, particularly in Kona in the years past. So, I figured a new approach, even if it was forced, might be just what I needed.
Yeah. So every year, aqua jogging leading into Kona.
Yep. It's funny, actually, Sebastian Keane, they won in 2014. He won it off of aqua jogging. Yeah. So maybe there's something to be said about how much
something to it. And Ben too. I mean, last year, Ben Hoffman. So he had a year last year where he had an injury, and then this year he had his daughter. So he really didn't race a lot this year, and then he came in and he did it too. I mean, he ran like crazy. So I don't know. There's got to be something to it there.
Yeah.
So your splits were 47:38 for the swim, 2.4 miles, 112 miles on the bike in the winds, which they were back again this year versus last year, which was very, very calm. And the heat, of course, 4:18:12. Then on the run, your best run to date, sub 250, 2:49:44. So what in your mind during the race stands out to you as some pivotal moments during that race and the way that it played out?
In terms of dynamic, there was definitely a few moments on the bike. I had a great swim, luckily. I think there's maybe 8 or 9 guys that made that swim break. And every year I always, say that this is a year that there's going to be a break in the swim, and there's going to be enough strong cyclists in that break to hold, to make a move on the bike and hold off. And this is a year played out. There was, I think, 5 of us that pretty quickly formed that front group. And by the coming down from the turnaround to Javi, that had whittled down to myself, Jan Frodeno, and Alistair Brownlee. And I think most people know, Jan won a gold medal at the Olympics in 2008, and Alistair won the gold medal in 2012 and 16. So at one point, we're about 80 miles into the bike or so. It's just 3 of us, and I'm on the front. And I'm thinking to myself, there's 3 gold medals in this group, and none of them are mine. Am I in the right spot? But I had trained. Yeah, I trained for that bike, and I think having the running injury really helped me put more emphasis on my cycling, which is really important, because if you go in and you ride too hard, you ride above your ability, you're just not going to be able to have the run you want, no matter how well you've trained the run. And my cycling coach, Matt Bottrell, actually had in my training peaks, he calculated my time for the conditions of the day before the race to be 4:17:58.
Oh,
So
that is close.
He calculated within 14 seconds, which is insane, So it shows that, like, I didn't do anything crazy on the bike. I rode to my ability and what we had trained, and I rode smartly, and that leads to having a good race or good run at the end of the race. So yeah, before we knew it, Jan threw in a big surge around 95 miles, and I knew it wasn't what I should do, so I stayed calm and rode my own ride at that point. And Alistair tried to go with him. He blew up, and then I shortly caught him, and then he kind of started going backwards at that point. But for me, that was just a sign that, hey, you made the right call. You raced within yourself. You used that little group of 3 as much as you could, and then when it was time to be smart, I stayed smart and got into my own rhythm.
Yeah, I remember watching it in the tracker, and I was like, okay, he's losing a bit of time to Jan, but it's like, I don't know, I think this is probably the right thing to do here. And then I saw Alistair starting to fade away as well in that tracker. Yeah. So, I got off the bike solidly in second place with about 2.5 minutes back on Jan, I think, right off the bike. And then after transition, you actually had a pretty speedy transition. You cut that down to about 1.5 minutes of a deficit to Jan, and then you were there all day, ready just in case he faltered. But he had a great day.
Yeah. No, I was running just about 10 seconds. Actually, it was exactly 10 seconds a mile through mile 18 or 19 slower than him. And then I think maybe my run fitness did start to show a little bit towards the end. That's kind of when you need that run volume in your legs. But it's still held on. I had a 2-minute gap on Sebi, who's kind of the only guy that I realized, or that I knew, that was close to me, that I had to kind of pay attention to. And we hit the turnaround in Hawaii, and I checked my Garmin and saw that I was up to about 2:30. So I thought, all right, be smart. You're doing the right thing. Just keep doing what you're doing. No heroics right now. And I got back onto the Queen K, and then I started getting splits that he was 3 minutes back. So I'm like, sweet, all right, cruise control. But then turns out Ben Hoffman was running hot behind Sebi, trying to chase him down, and that caused, of course, Sebi to run faster. And then my gap started to shrink, and then I kind of started getting fired up. So then I had to pick my pace up again, which I'm glad I did, because then it wouldn't have been a sub-8 performance without that little push at the end by the Hoff and Sebi.
Yeah, and taking us right to the finish there. That moment when you were running down the finish line, American flag over your shoulders, just an amazing moment. Can you recall what was going through your mind during those moments?
I saw Rinny, who unfortunately had some issues with her hip, and she said really enjoy that last little run down Ali'i. It's a special moment. And I thought, is she just saying this because she doesn't want me to get the house record for the run? Run 250. And I knew I was on just sub 250 pace, but no, I didn't want to break 8, so I had to be. I didn't want to slow down too much. But in all honesty, this was the first year where I did really enjoy that rundown. Usually I'm just hanging on by just dear life at that point, and I'm just trying to get to the finish line without falling over, which we've seen many times. Some great athletes just have those epic meltdowns hundreds of meters from the finish line. But this year it was amazing. I just could feel the energy of the crowd, and there was just so much joy in the crowd, and it was super special. And then
reuniting with Izzy and Rinny?
Oh, that was great too. Yep. And my parents were there, and my older brother Thomas, who that I mentioned got me into the sport. It was really special to have him at the finish line. Without him, I would have never even known what a triathlon was. So to have that kind of come for full circle, the guy that got me out of got me into the sport, to be there at, one of my greatest moments was pretty awesome.
Mm-hmm. Very cool. So onto your nutrition. I mean, there's tons of curious minds out there wondering how you use UCAN in your training, how you use it on race day, like what you actually did in Kona. So, we'll get to that in a second. But, I mean, many refer to nutrition as the fourth discipline of triathlon. So for you, how important is nutrition, and how's that approach, has it changed over the years?
Nutrition is, in my opinion, the holy grail of Ironman. If you get that figured out, everything else seems easy, to be honest. I've been doing this race since 2011, and I still haven't felt before this year that I had a really good nutrition plan, including last year. 10 miles, I just running with Patrick Lange and Braden Curry, and just absolutely fell apart when I shouldn't have. My heart rate was fine. I was in a good spot. So yeah, this year, I mean, being able to incorporate UCAN has been a big plus. It's almost a missing piece for me in that nutrition plan. And I think not only the results in terms of times, but how I felt through the day, and the fact that I came across the finish line and could enjoy it because I had set myself up properly, and I wasn't just hanging on because my body was just struggling to do whatever it could to keep moving was a testament as well to the changes.
Awesome. So how did you first learn about UCAN specifically, and why did you make the switch to it?
Yeah, I mean, I found out about UCAN years ago. In the early days, I always really try to keep an eye. I feel like as a professional, you should always be trying to become a better athlete, always be learning, and you should know the products that are out there that might make you a better athlete. And unfortunately, now that I look back, at the time, I didn't really understand how to use the product, and I didn't give it an honest shot. And fast forward to this year, getting to meet you, Matt, and then of course Peter and Shoba, getting to understand how to properly use the product, how to incorporate it into not only my race nutrition, but my training nutrition and my daily routine. Really opened my eyes to the possibilities of what we could do, and how I could add this whole new element of nutrition with the superstarch, and have that constant steady energy as a baseline from all my other nutrition as a starting point. It was pretty amazing, and I got really excited, and I went all in. I really think you have to just totally buy in. I completely bought in, incorporated into pre-training with breakfast, in between workouts, and then post training with the recovery products. And I was amazed at the consistency in training and how good I felt. And once that happened, it was all just gold from there.
Yeah, I mean, I've seen you incorporate it into really every feature of your life, not just your training, but into recovery, into your you haven't trained in hours, you're still using some UCAN product in some way, whether it's in a smoothie, whether it's in,
Right.
just using UCAN Hydrate or something. It's been amazing the way that you've incorporated it into so many different ways, into your life. So give us a little bit more of a specific sense, like some of the things that you do. I mean, I just mentioned the smoothie, but, some of the other things that you like to do that have sort of helped your, not only the way that you train, but the way that you feel too, just throughout the day. Like some of the, what are some of the things that you like to do?
Yeah, I think for me, some of the starting the day before my runs, I have a pretty sensitive stomach, so if I'm going out for a really hard run, I can't stomach that much. But I'll do a bar before the run. I've told Matt many times that kind of my little treat is a chocolate UCAN bar with peanut butter on top of it. Let's get some extra calories. It's
a tin bar.
Right? Yeah, but that's a quick, easy way for me to get that consistent energy for that first session. And then when I can't eat solids in between sessions, like we talked about Terrible Tuesdays, where I'm in a hard run right into a hard swim, that's where I'll use kind of the, like lemon or orange UCAN energy product to keep me going, that I can sip on in between those two sessions. Honestly, my favorite is post-training recovery with the vanilla, the protein product, because it sets me up for so much better of a day. And once you're done all your training, that's when you need to get those calories in, right? you don't want to have big insulin spikes like I used to do, have a huge meal, crash, get lethargic, get a little fuzzy in the brain, and then all of a sudden get really hungry again, and then go grab a handful of M&Ms or something. You know, you have that consistent energy, and that's when your body's starting to repair, right? Particularly going into the nighttime when you're sleeping. And that's really where you need that good energy source, is when you're letting your body do its job in terms of repairing itself and getting you ready to train again the next day.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, awesome. I know that Tim shake, the vanilla shake, it's a hot item, and I know there's a bunch of people that you work with closely that are huge fans now too because of you, because they're like, that thing is amazing. I'm on it too. So so now you know, for racing specifically, I mean, you use UCAN a bit differently when you race versus when you train, because you're incorporating some high glycemic carbohydrates into your approach. So take us through on race day. Let's just use Kona. How you fueled race day, starting with pre-race and going all the way through to when I handed you your cold vanilla UCAN recovery shake at the finish line.
Yeah, so for me, my pre-race really starts the day before, and that's where you know, I've been incorporating more of the drink into kind of throughout the day just to supplement. So, you know, on top of, you know, the bars, my normal routine in the morning, you know, in the afternoon when I'm getting ready for bike check-in and stuff, I've got a couple scoops of lemon or orange in the shaker, you know, sipping that throughout the day. You know, after dinner, earlier dinner, because it's obviously an early race start, you know, at night I have another scoop, you know, that I'm sipping on before I go to bed. And then it's kind of my normal routine with a bar and then some toast in the morning, just to get kind of try to get a little extra in that pre-race. And then once again, it's you know, another scoop and then a little high glycemic mixed in with that right before race start, just to try to top up as, you know, as much as I can. And then I really, in terms of in the race, it's on the bike where I take in the bulk of the product. And for me, you know, Matt, you kind of alluded to it, but if I were to show you my lab results and what I'm burning per hour at Ironman effort, it's insane. It's a lot of calories, and I need multiple energy sources to be able to kind of combat that. And that's the beauty of UCAN. You can, if you still want to do some high glycemic stuff, you add it to it. You have different source of energy, which, you know, your body can only absorb so much of one thing. So when you start to introduce multiple energy sources, you're just giving your body so much more to work with. So I'll do 3 bottles, 2 scoops of UCAN, 2 scoops of high glycemic, and everybody knows Rennie is a GU athlete, so I actually do use some of her stuff, her GU Roctane, to mix in with that. So 3 bottles of that through the bike, a couple of caffeinated gels as well, and then just every aid station a bottle of water, and that's really important too. And then just pure Himalayan pink salt for extra sodium. And
so do you just take the salt like by itself, or do you put that into your drinks, or how do you
put it into the drinks? I put a couple scoops of that into the drinks, and then I also just have like the little shaker of salt, and you can just, if you feel like you need a little extra, little bit of salt on the thumb, you know, on the tongue, and you're off and going.
Yeah, and you're talking like the pink salt is like the bigger crystals, or the, you know, so you can like feel it go down.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, pretty fine. Like base salt is basically pink Himalayan salt, you know. So yeah, it's
simple. Now with those 3 bottles when you're on the bike, you know, how do you carry that? So like, you know, where are the bottles? Are you using special needs? Did you have all 3 bottles on the bike?
No, yeah, I don't. I've learned that in Kona you can't rely on special needs. You don't know if you're going to get it. You don't know if they've lost people's bags before. You know, if the handoff's going to go bad. So I have 3 nutrition bottles. I have in between my aero bars, I have my hydration bottle with water, and then I have on my top tube a bottle, and then on the frame I have a bottle, and behind my seat I have a bottle, and they're all aero bottles. So, and I can kind of pull them off and you know, use those as I need throughout the race.
Mm-hmm. Cool. So yeah, I mean, obviously Tim just mentioned that he uses so high glycemic carbohydrates in his race plan. So just in general, like for those of you who are pushing the intensity on race day like Tim, I mean, he mentioned his energy expenditure is through the roof. He's pushing really high percentage of his FTP, and his FTP is really high. So that energy expenditure is massive. So for him, he's found that incorporating some of that high glycemic into his approach works well when he's got those high intensity efforts on top of the UCAN. And then we've got some users who use pure UCAN and they perform really well on that. And we have other users who use a combination like Tim, maybe a mixture throughout the bike and then in the run. And then we have others who, actually my personal approach is to have UCAN throughout the bike and then switching over late in the race, like the second half of the run, to the high glycemic stuff. So yeah, kind of just have to test and tinker with what works best for you. You can try it on maybe some simulation days, but really the true test is in your races when it's put to the test. I mean, especially in a race like Kona when it's hot, that's the true test. So, or Chattanooga this year was really hot. So, things like that. It's like, okay, if you can nail your nutrition on a day like that, you've nailed your nutrition. So
yeah, absolutely. And like you said, it is very individual, and you have to try to. It's taken me years, decades almost, to figure this out in an Ironman. And you just have to be willing to try some different approaches in training, obviously first, and build off of it. And the high glycemic stuff, when you're pushing the throttle, it's a big part of the equation, but you can really mess it up. And if you don't have something to fall back on, if you don't have that baseline like I had in Kona with UCAN, you can get yourself into trouble. So, I found this is almost an insurance policy for me, with my nutrition plan.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a great way to put it. Like it's going to stop you from bottoming out and having those low periods. Like I think you mentioned at mile 10 last year, kind of experienced in Kona, where you kind of just levels went low and you felt like $1 million 5 minutes before, and then boom, you're like, not doing so well. So that's where the UCAN shines is that insurance policy.
I remember seeing my coach Julie Dibbins on the course last year, right after that point in 10 miles, and she had this. She looked like a ghost. She's like, "Oh my gosh, she's done." That's it.
So I'm going to mention to everybody right now that if you'd like to use UCAN or like to try it out if you haven't tried it before, then the best way to get started is with the UCAN Try Starter Pack. And I'm going to be posting a link into the chat right now. That link is for 50% off our Try Starter Pack. Its retail value is $30. We're offering it here for 50% off. It's $15. So just click the link that I just posted into the chat, and that's the best way to try it. It's got a great smattering of our formats, a great smattering of our different flavors, so that you can try all sorts of different products that we have and figure out what works best for you. If you are a user who's used it, many, many times before, and you're just looking to stock up, or you go through the Try Starter Pack and now you're looking to buy a tub or a box of bars or a jar of hydrate or whatever it might be, then you can use code TOINTRY. That's happens to be TO's Twitter handle and Instagram handle. I'm posting that in the chat as well right now. And TOINTRY is for 20% off, and that's good till the end of the year. So it's on anything on our site, anytime until the end of the year. So that's the best way to do it at our website, which is www.generationyoucan.com, which I'm also pasting into the link here. So now I think we can go. Let's see if we should get some questions here. I know tons of people have been just throwing questions at me left and right. This is awesome. I love all the engagement. Lots of curious minds here. So let's see if we could hit a bunch of these. So Tim, let's see. Looks like you were taking. How many carbs did you target on the bike and versus on the run? I mean, you mentioned you preload a lot on the bike. So what's sort of the difference there between the two?
Yeah, I think I was up to like 110 grams an hour
on the bike. Yeah.
On the bike,
How does that compare to the run?
Run is not nearly as much. I'm thinking maybe half that. You kind of hope to be where you need to be coming off the bike, and it's hard to calculate too with little cokes you're grabbing and things like that. But yeah, definitely high on the bike. I couldn't stomach that much on the run, I don't think.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think so many people experience that. I know me personally as well. It's really hard to just everything really like ingest, digest while you're on the run. And your heart rate's through the roof, and at that point you're somewhat dehydrated because you've been out there in the heat for a long time and sweating all day long. So yeah, it's definitely a strategy that I think overall people should give it a try by taking in more during the bike and less on the run. That's where really one of the ways that UCAN shines too, is that you can get more in during the bike and take in the calories and the energy that you need on the bike, and then not have to worry about so much on the run. You can actually kind of preload or front load the bike, so that way you don't have to have as much. And you couldn't really do that with something like a gel, maybe like a regular high glycemic gel. If you suck down 5 gels on the bike, that wouldn't really front load you. You'd just be crashing, about 45 minutes later, in probably a pretty hard crash, because you had taken in so much sugar at once. You have a massive stomach ache. So, but it's a pretty nifty thing with UCAN. You can really take in a good amount while you're on the bike, and that way it'll cover you for a good portion of that run. So I got a question from Michael Cross here. Tim has such an incredible ability to suffer for a long time. I'd love to know how he mentally is able to go that deep for that long. Are there certain things he focuses on when it gets hard? How do you train for that?
I didn't realize how much you're in the zone in racing until a couple years ago when I did Ironman Florida, just to validate. So Renee and I just went, all we had to do was finish the race to qualify for Kona next year. And I was out there, and I wasn't mentally prepared, and I just thought, wow, these races are really hard. Like, we're out here a long time. I think it's all about leading into the race, like getting yourself and knowing the space your mind has to be in before the race, and preparing for that. I cut out a lot of music on a lot of my longer sessions now, just so I have to deal with my thoughts more. When you're training with music all the time, it becomes easy just to get through the session, but you're not managing, the other aspects of the race, like controlling your negative thoughts. And I focus on being in the moment. If you start thinking about the race as a whole, it becomes really overwhelming. If you start thinking about the fact you have to run a marathon and it's 90 degrees out and you still have 40 miles left on the bike, all of a sudden you're going to think that, maybe you can't do this, or maybe you should slow down. But if you can focus on the details, the process, all right, where am I with my nutrition right now? Am I drinking enough water? Okay, how is my position on the bike? Am I relaxed? My shoulders relaxed on the run? Where's my cadence at? If you can focus on the process that's going to get you the goal you want, it helps you stay in the moment and kind of get through the race.
That's what Coach Dibbs was yelling at you on the Queen K.
Yeah.
Execution, Tim, execution. So let's see here. We got a bunch more questions. So let's see. We got a whole smattering. Wow. Thank you for all these questions. So, solid food. Did you take any solid food during the race?
I had a couple bites of a payday bar.
Oh, yeah? Oh, man.
Yeah.
Just sounded good to you? Have you done that in simulation too?
Like that saltiness from the peanut.
Oh, man. That's something you've done in past races too, and in some of your simulations?
Done in the past, yeah. Cool. But I have enough of my race fuel on me that it's not really part of the plan, but if I'm just feeling it, which is a good sign that your nutrition plan is on track. If you're like, oh, I can stomach that and it's hot outside, that means you've done all your fueling correctly. If you're actually thinking about that, usually if you haven't done it right, you can't even imagine having something like that in your stomach. And then on the run, definitely nothing solid on the run.
Mm-hmm. So, not nutrition related exactly. You put a lot of work to become a stronger runner over the years. What are your run volumes, both when you were working hard to pick up slack and now?
So my biggest run volume years, I really did have to work on my running in 2009 and 10. I ran a lot. I was running almost 100-mile weeks in the off season, so January, February, with swimming and running. So
you sound like Meb.
Yeah, but it paid off. It went. I really became a better runner those couple seasons. I set still my PR, 70.3 PR. I ran, I think, 3 111s in that 18 months.
Wow.
So yeah, definitely really helped a lot. And then now I settled down. If I'm running, 60-mile weeks, it's a pretty solid run week.
So we have a question. How do you manage your nutrition on the bike course after the pre-prepared UCAN nutrition runs out after mile 50? Those 3 bottles last you through the whole bike, though, right?
Oh yeah. I do one of those bottles like basically every 90 minutes, like
Okay.
throughout the 90 minutes.
How,
So
so sort of throughout. So is it kind of a steady consumption? I mean, how often are you reaching for a bottle? Is it like is it 5 minutes? Is it 15? Is it every
yeah, probably
45 minutes? I mean,
5 to 10 minutes, depending
uh
on how I feel. Yeah.
okay,
And
yeah,
I kind of see it as like, okay, if a scoop of UCAN gets me 2 hours of like baseline nutrition for me, then all right, let's pace that out to make sure it's over 8 hours of racing, right? So,
mm,
if you know that you're going to be a 15-hour marathon or Ironman guy, or you're hoping to break 16 hours, then kind of I would suggest that like, okay, 2 scoops, 1 scoop per 2 hours, is minimum. Um, you kind of plan from there. And for me,
yeah.
I can do that on the bike. If you're out there for a longer time, you may want to consider having part of that as your run nutrition as well.
hmm Yeah, I've done that before, where you take a gel flask and you put a concentrated version of UCAN in there, coming out of T2, tuck it into your shorts, your tri kit, or at least I do. I don't consume it right away. I kind of get settled into the run a little bit first. Consume the UCAN gel, essentially. You're kind of making a makeshift UCAN gel out of it, and I take that down at mile 3 or so, and then it lasts me for a good portion of that first part of the marathon, and then I personally will switch over to the high glycemic at that point, just because it's kind of convenient. And at that point of the race, you kind of just want something sugary sometimes. You're just looking for that. And so, how are you tempering your new household bragging rights with your role as a supportive husband to Rennie?
Yeah, it's too soon. Too.
Yeah, you don't want to go there, right?
No, I am all in support mode. I mean, yeah, truth be told, it's usually Rennie's usually on this other side of the coin. She's usually the one that's has to deal with me having a bad race. So I'm happy to be here to support, and she's kind of working through some of those issues, and I think she's planning on thinking about doing Cozumel at the end of the year. So we'll see.
Mm-hmm. Cool. Inside tip there for anybody tracking Rennie. You
Right.
you might be the first to know here.
Breaking
Um,
news.
Yeah, right. So actually, I want to go back real quick to something, because you were saying how kind of like dosing and pacing out the UCAN and kind of calculating how much you think you need. And just to put it like things into perspective, like how different it is for racing and training for you. We've just talked, pretty good depth on your race nutrition and how many calories, how many carbs, grams of carbohydrate you're taking in, how you've got the high glycemic mixed in there. But I remember the very first ride that you ever did, I think with UCAN, you came back and you said you did a 3-hour ride. And do you remember how you fueled that day with UCAN?
Yeah, that was just 2 scoops in a bottle.
Yeah.
And I think that's important to kind of note when you're training purely aerobic, and you're doing volume sessions. I think that's when you can really. I just focus on UCAN as my training product without adding anything else, because it's a great chance to really get your body working more efficiently in terms of your metabolic system, and it has just that constant energy you need without getting crazy. I mean, if my heart rate's under 140, 145, definitely that's all I need. And I worked as I became fitter and became more efficient. That 2 scoops in a bottle was lasting up over 4 hours for some of my longer rides.
Wow. Yeah, that's definitely quite efficient. A scoop per 2 hours, especially even at your lower intensities, is still a good number of watts. So you're definitely quite efficient on those things. And I remember that trail road.
Yeah, Trail Ridge.
Trail Ridge Road. That's a good story.
Oh yeah, it's such a great climb. And if anybody's familiar with Trail Ridge, it's a road that's the highest continuous road I think in the country. The peak is over 12,000 feet, and we ride from Boulder, and it's like 2.5 hours to Estes Park of just climbing, and then another hour and a half, 2 hours from Estes up to the top to the. They have kind of a visitor center up there, and we got up to the visitor center, and I'd just been kind of on UCAN all day, and Brittany gets up there, and she's just like eating French fries and like beef chili or whatever they're selling at the hawking at the shop. And she's like, why aren't you hungry? And I'm like, I've been on UCAN all morning.
And anybody that's used UCAN could relate to that. Like,
Right.
you don't feel as hungry afterwards. You just got that steady blood sugar, that steady energy. I love that story. Like, yep, on the UCAN. So with aqua jogging, at the request of your wife, I was curious what a typical aqua jogging workout looked like while you were recovering. Was it a quick 10-minute thing or much longer?
No, I would, my aqua sessions were probably up to 75 minutes. That was kind of the longest
That's
one I
gotta
did.
get boring, huh?
Oh my gosh. It's rough. And I was doing them like in conjunction with my swim. So I'd be at the pool in the water for like 3 hours.
Wow.
Yeah, just a giant prune when I got out of the water.
I was gonna say wrinkly fingers.
Yeah. I like to mix up with my aqua jogging. If I can, I like shallow water if I can push off the bottom. I really feel like that's a great way to work on your form, to work on your getting your foot placement under your body and really getting that nice extension from your hips.
Mm-hmm.
If I'm doing intervals, then I'll do deep water and just really short burst, 30, 45 a minute kind of burst. And if you do some kind of pyramids and things like that, and you can get the session to go by pretty quickly.
So you mentioned testing. You said in the lab. Do you like VO2 max testing or metabolic testing to determine your calorie needs for a particular power or pace zone?
Yeah, it's usually, I usually don't do VO2. Those tests are really hard.
Oh, yeah.
And I don't know if they're worth it because it takes a couple days. If you do that test properly, you have to rest a couple days before it, and then you have to recover from it. So yeah, mine is more like a threshold type metabolic testing, where you get all your training zones and your power, or your power zones for the bike and pace zones for the run.
What's in your Tim Vanilla Shake? It's got a couple versions of that.
Yeah, depends how I'm feeling. I love the frozen fruit for sure with almond milk and vanilla, or frozen bananas and peanut butter. It's all good stuff.
Making me hungry here. I might have to go get one of those right after this. and then of course, for anybody who, the simple version is just grabbing some either milk or unsweetened vanilla almond milk is Tim's favorite. Unsweetened vanilla almond milk, scoop or two of the vanilla, and boom, just shake it up. It's really good. It's really quite rich and delicious. But there's no sugar besides what's in the milk if you're using regular milk, and if it's the unsweetened vanilla almond milk, then I don't even know if there's any in there. So it's a great post-workout recovery treat. Let's see. Do you use UCAN to hydrate as well?
I do. Yeah, great hydrate product. I highly recommend watermelon. And I do a lot of that in the evening too, just catching up from the day, especially at altitude where it's very dry and you don't realize how much you're losing. You almost have to try to play catch up a little bit.
So it looks like a lot of these questions have already been answered by other questions. So how do you deal with UCAN settling in the bottle? Do you have any problems with that at all?
I actually race morning, I'll put it in. Overnight, I'll have it in a shaker, and then I'll shake it up and then pour it into my bottle before I go out for the session.
Yeah. So the shaker bottle that Tim's mentioning is on our website. It's I think it's listed on there for $10. It's a shaker bottle. It says UCAN on the side of it. It's got a wire ball, and that wire ball is awesome. It mixes it up really nicely and smoothly. And then Tim also mentioned that he mixes it up the night before. So he throws it in the fridge, and just the time and the fact that it's been in the fridge makes it awesome. Makes it way better. Makes it much smoother. The consistency is smoother. It doesn't taste as chalky, or and it definitely doesn't clump if you use something like a wire ball. So definitely recommend that, doing it like the night before, like Tim does.
You can also throw that wire ball in your water bottle if you're going out for a session, like a long ride. Throw the wire ball in your water bottle and just shake it up while you're out climbing a mountain or something, and keep going.
Yeah. Do you have a specific routine to heat acclimate?
I do sauna training, and then I do some stuff indoors. I wouldn't call it Well, actually, I was turning on the heater we have a training room here, and I would turn on the heater, turn off the fan. But you have to be very careful with those workouts because you can easily overdo it. So if you're, in my opinion, I know other people that go crazy, but stay aerobic for those sessions if you're really going to heat the room up, and don't keep them pretty short. I mean, 45 minutes, hour, and you're going to be okay. Yeah, I can't stress enough to not overdo those sessions. And 3 days a week in the sauna for a couple weeks, building from 20 to 30, 35 minutes. That helps a lot too.
Yeah. So we have a question from somebody. Does UCAN have athletes that have been successful doing long course distances with only UCAN nutrition and steer away from the high glycemic nutrition? So I guess I'll answer that one quickly, and then would like to hear your thoughts too, Tim. So I actually did Kona 2015 purely on UCAN. I had just 680 calories worth of UCAN, and I was 923. I was 72nd overall, so I'm definitely not a Tim O'Donnell, but not a shabby performance. Just straight on UCAN, so no high glycemic nutrition. So it could definitely be done. I actually ended up going a little bit too low in terms of the amount that I needed that day. So I'm definitely convinced that if I would have had maybe a serving or two more of UCAN during the race, then I would have performed better, even better than I did. So but then it remains to be seen whether, if I had incorporated some sort of high glycemic into my approach, for me, would that have improved my performance? I'm not entirely sure, and I don't think I'll ever truly know, because I can't quite go back in time. I don't have a time machine yet. So I don't know, Tim, you have any thoughts on that?
I was going to say, I know a guy that won Ironman Maryland.
I did. Actually, that race I did use high glycemic though, but yeah, thanks for the shout, Tim. Do you know what your peak fat oxidation rate is in calories per hour?
I don't know it off the top of my head, but I do have a
technical question there, but it's a good one. Is one scoop of UCAN for 2 hours advisable for slower athletes? So it really depends. One scoop for 2 hours might be the perfect amount for you, but one scoop for 90 minutes is closer to our typical recommendation for people to start. And one scoop per hour might be what works best for you. You kind of just have to find what works best for you in your training and your racing. I typically will suggest that people, for training, they'll do a scoop every 90 minutes, give or take, and then kind of dial it in, figuring out exactly how much they need. But then during racing, increase it by maybe 30 to 50 calories an hour of the UCAN, so that way you can cover the fact that you're out there at a higher intensity during races, at a higher, longer, more sustained output during races than you are during training. So for the same exact reason that I felt like I was a little bit too low in Kona 2015, is because I was just basing it off of what I had been doing in my training as far as the amount that I felt I needed, and then I found that wasn't enough because I was in a race scenario, and especially in the heat like that, I just needed a little bit more. But I don't know, Tim, you have any thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, I would say as you introduce yourself to anything, you start at a lower level, and then you can build. And as you add more and more, I think you'll find out your sweet spot, and maybe you back it off a little bit, and I think your body will start to tell you where it wants to be. But no matter what you do for your nutrition plan, I highly recommend you do race simulations. You don't have to do very many of them, but in an Ironman build, do at least one where you have a really hard session that kind of mirrors the conditions you'll be in a race, and you get the chance to test out your race nutrition. I really think that's important.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that testing, man. Good point, Tim. Had you ever not tested and then gone into a race and did it because of that? I know people have
actually. A couple of years ago, in Kona, they have the Pro Fluid Station, so I think every 3 miles or so they have that, and we always, we would use Coke on the run in a marathon, and for some reason, Rennie and I decided we should do Mountain Dew. So we had Mountain Dew and Pro Fluids, and we both finished the race. We ended up, luckily, we just, you quickly learn this is not what you want, and you don't use it. So it didn't really affect our races, but we quickly realized that was not what we should have in our Pro Fluid Station.
So we have a nutritionist here, one in our community that we recognize, and she says, to Tim's point, yes, true that. UCAN post-training to not only replace carbohydrates, but offering a slow, steady rise that's not feeling continuous hunger that can blow now only the training efforts, but blow not only the training efforts, but the dietary needs. So strong point. After using the product for several years, I've recognized recently that I can require more UCAN depending on the type of course. Oh, this is now moving on to somebody else's comment. They all kind of squish together. So depending on the type of course, have you found that overall you need more nutrition on like a hilly versus a flat or a hot versus a cool race?
I think cold races definitely. I tend to get my blow through my nutrition plan on a cold race, and I think it's just your body's working so much harder to stay warm, particularly if you're coming out of the water and your core temp has dropped in the water. So for me, on a cold race, I'll definitely try to boost up. Actually, I just try to avoid cold races, but if I have to do one,
you do well in the heat. Why don't avoid it?
Right? Yeah. If there's not palm trees, I don't want to be doing a triathlon. That's kind of my rule of thumb. But yeah, I'd beef up for that. And I think it depends. It doesn't hilly or flat. It just depends on how you race that. If you're smart riding a hilly course and you're smart with your power and you're consistent, then it shouldn't be much difference. But if you're spiking your power up and down and not riding the hills well, then yeah, that's really going to change your nutrition, because you're going to be needing those huge bursts of short power are just energy killers. They're going to be pulling a lot of energy. So it's really how you ride versus the course.
Mm-hmm. And almost like on the hilly race, it's kind of like how you have to deal in the pro race with the fact that there's some surges and slows and stuff. You can't just be like a lot of us amateurs who are steadily long, plugging away, doing our race, trying to stay nice and steady. Yep. You have to kind of react to some of the dynamics and tactics that are going on.
Yep.
So as somebody asked, is UCAN NSF Sports certified? So UCAN's actually not a supplement, it's a food. So we're FDA approved and FDA regulated. And when somebody's asking, Rinny and you and Izzy, how do you handle life balance, work-life balance?
Yeah, it's definitely hard. We're lucky that we're doing the same thing, and that makes it a little easier on us. But yeah, when we have a great nanny who's key, but we have to make sure that we carve out family time. Absolutely. Like Sundays are, now really family days. And, when we're done training, we're not on watching Netflix, we're playing with Izzy. So it's just about kind of rearranging your day and your priorities. And we try to do a date night. We said every week, our original goal is a date night every week, but we have not been great at that. But if we can do one every 2 weeks or 3 weeks, it's still of a huge help.
Yeah, I think tons of people can relate to that one, because if they're not a full-time triathlete like you are, they got a full-time job and the training, and it's tough to find
even harder. I can imagine.
Yeah. Let's see. So, any thoughts on 2020? What are you going to be doing for racing?
Yeah, we're just trying to figure that out now. Luckily, since I'm on top 3, just have to validate next year, so I don't have to worry about chasing Ironmans. As long as I finish an Ironman, I'll be fine for Kona. And it looks like if some people have heard of the Collins Cup, it may be happening next year. That's going to be think of the Ryder Cup in golf. So it's going to be Europe versus U.S. versus the rest of the world. So that's going to be really fun to represent Team USA if that comes to fruition. That'll be in Rote during Challenge Rote that weekend. So I'm really hoping that comes off the ground. And then some other Ironmans I'm looking at, maybe Ironman South Africa, maybe Ironman Cairns again. And I don't know about racing in the U.S. There's some new races like Tulsa. So maybe I'll take a closer look at that and see if it works.
Cool. Yeah, you go over to Australia for what, a few months over the winter?
We do, yeah. Yeah, we usually spend our winters in Australia.
Mm-hmm. So that's sort of the reason why Cairns is coming to the picture, right?
Well, yeah, actually, if we do Cairns, we have to fly back. We did Cairns last year, and we have to fly back in June for Cairns.
Oh, it's kind of right.
Yeah. But beautiful spot. If you've never been to Australia, I highly recommend it.
Mm-hmm. So Maybe just one or two more questions here. Did you use any products with UCAN protein enhanced UCAN products during the race, or was that only just for after the race?
No, just before with some in the bar, and then after.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because the UCAN that you use when you're actually on the bike is 2 servings of the plain UCAN, right?
Plain, I use
in each
plain.
of the bottles. Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you periodize your nutrition? Like train on low carbohydrate at any point, or do you, and more when you're training heavily, that kind of thing?
Just on endurance rides, or endurance sessions. I'll do a couple aerobic fasted runs in the morning, but I won't do any hard training fasted. That's for sure, but nothing crazy.
Mm-hmm. Excellent. Well, just as a reminder, if anybody is wanting to try UCAN, you have that link that's in the chat, and it's for our Try Starter Pack. That's the best way to try it because it's got a smattering of things. If you want to stock up, then TOINTRY is a coupon code you can use on our website, generationyoucan.com. So, Tim, thank you so much for coming on. And what do you got going on for like this upcoming, couple weeks, or what kind of races you thinking about?
Yeah, we're going to plan is to do Ironman 70.3 Cabo in 2 weeks, and then that'll be it for racing for me. We're going to go.
Do you think you'll race too? You're going to race too?
I'm planning on it, yeah.
Right.
I set my bike with Tri-Bike today.
Okay.
So I have the option. We'll see how I feel at the end of the week. I just want to see how my body comes around. And then a fun race in St. Croix, Beauty and the Beast Triathlon. It's our 10-year anniversary. That's where Renee and I met in 2009. So we're going to go back,
relay, right?
Do a relay and have some fun. And yeah, come out and join us if you're just looking for a good party race. We'll be putting out some information on the race on our social media pretty soon. Have some cool registration prizes, and I think we're going to do some contests for the relays as well. But it's a great party, fun race, sprint and half distance, I believe.
Mm-hmm. Well, excellent. So thank you so much for coming on, Tim. Second place at the Ironman World Championship, really just a week ago. Amazing to have you on the UCAN show. Amazing to have you part of the UCAN family. It's just been quite a trip this year, watching you progress and incorporate UCAN into your daily life, into your training, then into your racing, and just absolutely slamming it out there in Kona. So thank you so much for coming on the show. Thank you so much for answering so many of the questions, and thank you all for all the questions. I'm sorry if I didn't get to yours. There were just so many of them flooding the screen here. But thank you again. If you have any questions, actually, you can email them to matthew.bach@ucanco.com. And I'll be happy to answer your questions that are specifically about UCAN, or to try to get some answers for you regarding your direct questions to Tim. You can always, of course, shoot him a message on Instagram, or like over the Twitter or something. Maybe he'll get back to you that way. But so thank you so much again, Tim, for coming on.
Of course, my pleasure.
We'll see you around.